it's exploring options, but needs to factor in its own ability to supervise community firefighters, in addition to handling its own operations. Molly Siegel, CBC News, Vancouver.
And you can hear more about this story today on What on Earth at 11 a.m., 11:30 in Newfoundland. That's on CBC Radio 1 or on CBC Listen or anywhere you get your podcasts. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, if you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with CBC News.
And here's your weather forecast for Ottawa. A special weather statement has been issued for heavy rain today, with rainfall up to 30 millimeters, a high of 23 with the humidex at 31. Showers or thunderstorms continuing overnight with a low of 17. For Monday, cloudy with a chance of showers and a high of 18. Cloudy periods overnight, a chance of showers with a low of 11. For Tuesday, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 22.
Okay, so I've now got a brewing stand, and I have successfully made a bookworm potion. I have one more glaze roll.
August 18th, I'm Duncan McHugh, sitting
Let's
in the
make
kitchen
more
at
awkward potions so we
Sunday
can use
magazine.
our...
The U.S. presidential election has already been won for the history books, and the next chapter will be written this coming week as Democrats gather in Chicago. We'll start there today with our U.S. election panel. Then, from the hubbub of the political scene to the surprisingly noisy world of life underwater, I'll speak with a Canadian science journalist who's decoding the sounds beneath the surface and also sounding an alarm about them. In our second hour, we'll turn our gaze to the conflicts in the Middle East, Russia and Ukraine, as we gather our global affairs panel. Plus, Feifei Li, the so-called godmother of artificial intelligence, on why she's optimistic about what lies ahead. It all starts right now on the Sunday magazine. If there is one word that could be used to describe how things are going in the U.S. presidential campaign, it could definitely be unpredictable, or maybe even unprecedented. From an assassination attempt against one nominee to the switcheroo of another, there's been no shortage of drama for both the Republicans and Democrats in this election cycle. Now, as the stage is being set quite literally for the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, all eyes will be on Vice President Kamala Harris as she tries to set her party's agenda going into the fall. For analysis of what this all means, less than 80 days to the November election, we've reconvened our U.S. election panel. Toulouse Wolobrunipa is the White House bureau chief for the Washington Post. Molly Ball is a senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Keith Bogue is a former Washington correspondent for CBC News. Good morning to you all.
Well, drop by a light.
Not on the
And
way.
last time we had you
We
all
don't
together
need
for this
it.
panel, Joe
Until
Biden was the
after.
Democratic
They're
nominee.
probably still
Former
sleeping.
President Donald Trump had just survived an assassination attempt. Boy, time flies when we're having fun. Things have kind of changed since then, to say the least. Molly, walk us through how big a shift Americans are witnessing in this campaign right now.
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? But it was really just one short month ago that things were completely different in this campaign. And we have, it has really completely reset the landscape. These new developments, particularly the change on the top of the Democratic ticket. We have seen, Toll's organization, the Washington Post, has new polling out today that shows Kamala Harris with a national lead. And I think just as significantly, this poll and others showing just a complete change in enthusiasm for the Democratic side of the ticket, where before voters generally, but particularly Democrats and Democratic-leaning constituencies, were quite depressed and demoralized and unenthusiastic about their ticket. Now we see the Democrats are actually more enthusiastic about their ticket of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz than the Republicans are about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. They're drawing huge crowds. They're clearly riding a wave of enthusiasm and momentum, and it's just a completely different picture than the one a month ago, where it was really Donald Trump who was riding high.
Tolu, you were in Delaware when
wildest 4 weeks in politics in modern American history. I mean, in addition to the current president dropping out of the race abruptly with a statement on Twitter, we have seen, as Molly said, a major shift in the entire trajectory of the campaign with the rise of Kamala Harris. And we have seen the former frontrunner, Donald Trump, really flailing and trying to respond to the changing of circumstances. He's struggled to land a punch against Kamala Harris. He's struggled to focus on a specific kind of attack against her. He's talked about her race, her appearance, her gender, even her intelligence, and made all of these attacks that don't seem to be winning over very many voters. And we have seen a number of polls showing Kamala Harris surging. And so it's been a wild ride journalistically to try to cover this major change. It's rare to see polls change so rapidly, especially over the course of this campaign, which has already been unprecedented and unpredictable. We've had an assassination attempt, we've had felony, we've had all kinds of different things happen, including a debate, and the polls largely were relatively steady, and it showed a close race with Joe Biden trailing. And now we are seeing a surging by Kamala Harris, and she's going into her convention in Chicago where she's hoping to get a bigger bump in polling and really come out with less than 75 days to go to the election in a very strong position. I've never seen any kind of change like this in American politics in recent times.
Malu and Tolu and Molly have both talked about the polls, but Keith, I just want to emphasize, I mean, the candidate change for a major American political party, it is so unprecedented. It has happened in Canada a number of times in national and provincial levels, but hasn't succeeded though. What's different here?
Well, sure. I mean, you're right, I think, to make reference to Canadian examples, and also I would add that they almost never work. And the astonishing thing here is how upsetting this has been to the political conversation. A stunning move, risky move, tricky move, one after another, and yet, outwardly at least, it seems that they pulled it off and pulled it off smoothly. One of the things that I thought was astonishing was when Joe Biden dropped the tweet that he was pulling out of the race. 1 hour later, he dropped another tweet saying that he's endorsing Kamala Harris. Essentially, the effect of that was to foreclose on any other possibility. And we saw how quickly the party came behind her. But going into that, there had been conversation about, well, what if he does go? Could we have a brokered convention? Who would be involved in that? Who would run? It all went away in the snap of the fingers. And here we are now with fairly concrete evidence, as Tolu's paper points out tomorrow, that not only has it worked in terms of smooth transition, but it's actually turned the race around. And I'll tell you, in my experience, which is, somewhat lengthy, I have seen races turn around. I have seen only one race in my whole experience turn back again. That was here in Canada in 1988.
And you talk about it turning around. I mean, Harris is now pulling ahead of Trump in key swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. He even tied him in Georgia and Arizona. And those two states were solidly leaning red. So Keith, how is Kamala Harris appealing to voters in those places?
Well, I saw one really interesting comment before the latest gate polls, which was about a full vote. And what it said was that the voters were looking at Kamala Harris as a kind of generic Democratic candidate. And that was meant as a kind of encouraging thing, meaning that it was helping her in the sense that people were making a choice against Donald Trump and for Democrats without Biden on the ticket. They really didn't care that much about who it was at that point, as long as it wasn't either Donald Trump or Joe Biden making their choice. So she started out with that advantage. She's defining herself now. That will give some people reason perhaps to pause. It may give others reason to join the bandwagon.
insults at Harris. Molly, the Republicans were riding high after their convention in July. Why is the Trump campaign struggling so much right now?
Well, they've had an incredible reversal of fortune, and it has scrambled their plans.